Welcome to another episode of One of Us Knows What They're Talking About, and the other one is you. I'm Lori Burch, your host. Join us as we discuss and unpack wills, trusts, estate planning, and probate law in a way that's actually informative, interesting, and, well, hopefully entertaining. Because if you don't have a will, the state of Texas has one for you. Let's dive in. Sometimes topics are ones that we think are good ones to cover. And sometimes they're topics that you people out there, that the public bring to us that we would not ordinarily consider something that needs to be talked about. And my concern, colleagues, is that from our many, many listeners and fans, I don't want to get any hate mail because, all the mail that we get. Anyway, because I want to be delicate about this stuff, because what we're going to talk about today is something that comes up with some regularity, and it has to do, I know there are many different types of relationships, and there's many types of relationships that have any various number of people associated with them. But for today's purposes, we're going to talk about couples. Okay? We're going to talk about two people, married, unmarried, or not. But something that comes up with a fair amount of regularity for us is whether you should do your estate planning legal documents together or not. And so what I don't want to inadvertently do is to sound judgmental on this topic, because I very intentionally am judgmental about other topics. But this one, it occurs to me that people just have different definitions, goals, needs, and so forth in their relationships and in their marriages. And when I have my viewpoint of what it means, I try to be respectful that it doesn't mean that to everybody, because some of the things that people will present to us, and they'll say, I want to get my will done, but my husband doesn't want to be involved and I don't want anything to go to him. And I'm just like, what is the point then? Like, why are you all married? Like, why can't you talk to them? Like, no, I can't talk to them about this. There's no way. I just need to do this on the sly. And that happens a lot. Does it not happen a lot?
It does.
Or does it not happen that much, but for the people it happens to, they come to us? I don't know.
Well, I think it just happens a lot more than you would think, especially with something as, all of my stuff, who am I going to leave it to? And I may or may not own it jointly with somebody else, but I still don't want them to know, is really weird.
Well, again, I like if it works for them, but then I also don't know, is this just a different way to view how a relationship works, or is it a cry for help?
Well, I have a really good example of, I knew a couple, they had been together for years and years and years, like decades. However, they're they lived, whenever they started dating, they didn't live together, and then they never cohabitated. They never lived together. What they did is they each had their own house on the opposite side of the street. So one lived on this side of the street, the other person lived on the other side of the street. And then one of them was she was the older one in the relationship. She was a retired teacher, and the other one, he owned a tattoo shop, and he would come home later. But they had a great relationship, but they just kept everything separate, lived across the street from each other, never made anything formal. And then years and years, when it down the line, whenever it came time for, stuff to get done, my understanding is one of the Connie is passed now. She had cancer, and it was really horrible and sad. And, Casey took care of her, and it was a whole, it was just a lot for everybody who really knew them. But he got her house, He's renting his house out now. But that was the thing. They lived across the street from each other. That's how their relationship worked. And it was great. So if like that's how you operate your life, you found something that works for you.
Yeah.
But outline it. I think communication, they outlined it to each other. They were open about it and they told each other, hey, this is what I'm going to do. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. Great. None of this, oh, let me keep it secret from the other person, especially if you live with them and you own a house with them.
I think that's the one that just kind of catches me off guard is when we have the people are like, oh no, I can't talk to my spouse about this. Yeah. And or like they'll never agree to do anything. I want to get this done, but they don't want to, so I'm just going to get it done. And so let's talk a little bit about the challenges that presents from a legal standpoint. In the first two big issues are very specific to Texas. So one, Texas is both a community property state and a common law marriage state. Does anyone feel like defining those two terms, or you just want me to do it?
I need Sam to pass me a tissue. Sam, can you pass me a tissue?
Oh no, we're ruining the mystique for people that the two of you
they know.
aren't in the same room.
We've discussed this before. We've discussed this plenty of times. Just had a small coffee.
Do y'all just want me to go over these concepts? I know I like to do the Socratic method with you guys, but look, we just did 2 days. Cynthia and I did 2 days of quarterly reviews for the entire team. And I mean, I don't think it's hyperbole to say it was life-sucking. Like, you know the Princess Bride, and if you don't know the Princess Bride, that's really sad. But there's the machine. Oh, what's that machine called? Anyway, it sucks life from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry we did that to you.
Well,
and
it's fine.
Sarah didn't.
Yeah, mine was a doozy.
Sarah's lasted maybe 5 minutes, and that's
Usually
including
that's
editorializing.
Yeah.
No, you were
didn't even close the door.
Didn't even close the door.
Did you not?
That's when you know.
So funny.
Well, listen, Sarah's is pretty straightforward because we are in constant communication with Sarah
literally have
about her job, her performance, her duties, when something goes awry. So,
and one of my favorite things about Sarah, and that's a very long list, but one of my favorite things is she allows me to critique her publicly in front of all of you. So she gets feedback, real-time feedback constantly.
Yeah.
In front of everybody.
Yeah.
And I think most other employees of Burch Law would cripple under that kind of exposure.
It keeps me humble.
Well, just some of the messages you get sent, just do better.
Yeah. So it's good that you're like that, Sarah, because besides Cynthia, you're also the person I work most closely with.
No.
Yeah.
So it's good that you can take me. And there's a weird thing about our mutual senses of humor or sense of humors. I think it's senses of humors. Anyway, Sarah, there's something we have. There's some vibe we've got. You laugh at everything I do, and your memes are always the funniest to me.
Sorry, Sam.
Yeah, listen, I talk. I'm getting close to the microphone. I talked to Sarah about this
as red as
because no, she's taken from my meme stash. I told her where I got them, and now that's all where she gets them because every day one of us will post something, and the other one will go, "No, I was going to post that." The amount of times it's happened in the last few weeks.
But Sam, I believe you, but I'm having a hard time believing you.
No,
because the you post is not the same.
This is what I said to Sarah. I was like, that's why you're the favorite, because if I posted these, I would have been last. But because you posted them, they got first.
It hits
you posted. So this is why This is why the reviews were life sucking, Sam, is because
I should have poured this up in my review.
the head trash that you guys tell yourselves.
If you would have, I would have told you to leave the room. Thank you.
I'm gonna throw something at my head.
Oh my gosh. Anyway,
No,
so
I think things just come from
anyway,
Sarah hit differently.
They do.
Just fine, I guess.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to meditate on that later. Okay. But anyway, it did remind me. So we do KPIs. What do KPIs stand for?
Sarah.
Key performance indicators.
Okay, and Sarah, please
like that.
define a key performance indicator.
They are indicators.
Oh,
Lord.
They are indicators. How do we say it? Indicators that are key to your performance.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, getting back to my original point, I'm really highly skilled at being derailed, but also remembering exactly where we derailed. Is I don't have the energy to quiz you guys on some of this stuff today as I normally do.
That's so valid.
So, common law marriage. So, one of the biggest misperceptions about common law marriage is people think that there is a time period. You have to cohabitate more than X amount of time. In Texas, that is not true. It could be an overnight stay. Sorry, lesbians.
I mean,
Okay. And it's not going to get any better for you guys, as I mentioned the other two requirements. you have to have the intent of being married, and third, you have to hold yourselves out as being married. So this is my spouse, this is my partner, this is my wife, this is my husband. All of those, ding, 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 can get you to where, whoops, we are considered common law married under the state of Texas. So then that's a natural segue to the fact that, okay, so married on purpose or by accident, we are a community property state. And there's only 9, but we're one of them. So community property, there's a lot of caveats to this because it's the law. So heaven forbid it's black and white, because if it were, we couldn't justify our fees. So essentially anything you have going into a marriage is your separate property. Once you are married, assets that you acquire, regardless of whose name it's in, is community property. So you get married, you go buy a house, maybe you have better credit or whatever, and it's in your name, but that doesn't matter because it was bought during the marriage. It's considered community property where your spouse has an interest in we'll just say half, even though we've talked about community property before and it's actually just equal rights to the whole, but let's just say half. Now, again, there's a lot of yeah buts. So if you purchase the home with separate property funds and this, that, and the other, but the way that most of you all conduct your lives, you fall in this category. Also, income off separate property is community property. So if you have a retirement account and it's worth $100,000 when you get married, and then by the time you get, I say 100,000. By the time you get divorced and or die, you choose which D is better. It's 200,000. Then that 100,000 is community property. If you have a stock that increases in value, if you have a home, technically you could argue that the increase in value, like all of that, it gets tricky. There are some exceptions. I'm not going to talk about awards you can get from like injury claims or settlements that you get from court. Like, let's just not worry about that. But one thing that's interesting is inheritance is considered separate property. So if you're married and you inherit a bunch of money from your family, or what will happen for me, a bunch of teapots, that is completely separate property, even though it was acquired, air quote, during the marriage. What happens though, where we have to talk to people about this is then what happens, let's just say it's money, and then you deposit it in a joint account. And then later on you get divorced, or let's say you pass away and you want whatever's yours to go a different way than to your spouse. There's this thing called tracing that you would have to do to really figure out, well, how did you do that? Because you commingled it. So it gets complicated. So that's why it's good to try and set things up separately. So the under this understanding of common law and community property law, when people come to us and say that they want to do planning, but they don't want their other spouse to know about it and they don't want their spouse to get anything, hopefully by now you can kind of understand where that can cause some conflicts. Some great ways to avoid that being an issue are things that are going to be an issue, or else you wouldn't be in that situation. But premarital agreements or postmarital agreements are a way to circumvent the stuff we just said. So you can say something is separate property, community property, yours, mine, whatever, joint. But if you can't get your spouse on board, or you don't want to talk to them, then it's really hard to get a pre or postmarital agreement as well. I do want to emphasize, though, it's not uncommon or even unusual for two different people to have their own attorneys to do this.
Yep.
Like that's totally fine, especially if you do have pre or postmarital agreements. And you don't even have to disclose that to each other. You really don't. But when it's a situation where, again, you're wanting to keep things secretive, or you want to say, well, I want everything to go to, let's just say, my kids instead of my spouse, because of community property laws, like we really can only do so much. Now, I was talking to someone recently who said, well, my husband's never going to get involved. He's not ever going to do anything. And then just part of this as a segue is nobody has automatic rights to do anything, to make decisions. So your spouse doesn't have automatic rights to make medical decisions, have access to medical records, pay bills, be executor, inherit property. So the problem becomes is with your spouse saying, well, I'm not going to do any of this, then that means if they're in the hospital, you don't have rights to make medical decisions or get emergency medical information. What happens occasionally is a hospital will be like, okay, we're going to pretend like it's not a problem, but they don't have to do that. And legally they shouldn't. And you can sometimes have to go to a court to get appointed to get information to make decisions. Or what if your spouse's adult children from another marriage or their parents come in and they equally want to make decisions? And a hospital or doctors can be like, hey, you guys, none of you technically have any rights because there's no medical power of attorney, no HIPAA release, no directive. You guys need to go to court and sort this out and come back to us with someone who's officially appointed. So when people say their spouse won't agree to do anything, just know that you're going to be in a position where you're powerless to do anything on their behalf. Okay, so just putting that out there. But anyway, somebody I was talking to recently was saying that no, they don't have a pre or postmarital agreement. Husband won't be a part of this. Nothing. What can I do? And it's like, you can set everything up, and you certainly don't have to have your spouse be a decision maker. Like that's not a problem, but it's really the property that is, and that's what and the assets. And so, but she said the big thing is my parents want to make sure that my inheritance doesn't go to my spouse. And so then it was like, okay, well, inheritance is separate property, but what would be really nice, so we don't get to that whole tracing thing I was talking about or commingling, is sure, go ahead and set up a trust, and then your inheritance and everything can feed into there and keep it separate from your spouse. So, I mean, there are ways to do this stuff. It just, I think back to like the fundamental issue that I have is like, if you can't talk to your spouse about these important decisions and what you want to do or what's important to you, then why are you married? And I never say that to people because I really do struggle with this, but I can tell you that is what I'm thinking. It's like, I guess the point of being married is far different for me than it is for other people. But when the lawyer hat comes on, it's like you're non-judgment zone, but you're making this very difficult to sometimes impossible to do anything about it. Sarah, you're smiling. What are you thinking?
I just think it's funny that well, it's not funny, but it's like yeah, why are you married if you can't talk about it, you know?
And I mean, we do have people then who respond like, "Well, I'm in a bad marriage." And I'm like,
Well,
"Then can you get out of it?" But again, we don't do divorce or family law. And I'm like, I don't know
no.
what to do. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. But if you should get out of it, come back and see us.
Yeah.
Um, a couple other things on this topic, but it sounds like Cynthia, like are you doing the Sarah thing where it looks like you're about to say something but you're actually not, or do you have
Little column A, little
something?
column B. Because it's one of those things. You were talking about the premarital, postmarital agreements, and how like those are really good. Like we use them as estate planning tools, not necessarily just like, oh, in case of divorce. It's like, no, these are really good tools for us. What's really frustrating, something that's happened a few times, is whenever one of the people entering into these agreements, they're saying, oh no, we're going to do it, but we have to have a schedule. We have to have something delineating like which assets are going to take on what characteristic. If they're going to remain separate property, or if you're going to allow them to, one of my favorite words, be commingled and become community property, things like that. And whenever people refuse, like, no, I don't want them to know, it's like, do you understand that in the future, though, if you have this document, you haven't disclosed something, like arguments could be made to where, it's community property or something else. Like, and it's just really frustrating whenever you're trying to explain to people. It's like, this isn't about them knowing what you have or us knowing what you have. It's you trying to protect whatever asset you want to protect. So you do have to be open with everybody. And that's a really big frustration I have, and I've had with different, because I've worked in family law here. We did pre and post marital agreements there for different purposes, but it's just like at the end of the day, we don't want to ask these things for our sheer amusement. It's there's a reason for it. Or how like Lori
Yeah.
was saying, like, yeah, you put your lawyer hat on, or you put your like legal field hat on, and it's like, okay, what is the nature of this transaction? This agreement that you're in with this other person? Like what is it? What is the transaction you're doing? Like, it's just frustrating whenever people like don't see that that is what it is. Transaction.
Yeah. And I think another kind of segue to that is another thing that we encounter, and it's not necessarily couples who want to keep it secret or one's not on board or something like that, but it's where they very much are on board to do their will, their trust, their estate planning together, but they don't agree on the decisions. And I know, since we deal
Yeah.
with a lot of parents with young kids, like they don't agree on guardianship. That's one thing. And look, you guys, so this is very important planning. And there's a lot of really great things that we can do to make things better for your family, for each other, for yourself. But what we cannot do is wave a magic wand and either make decisions for you, or if you're someone who doesn't have anybody that you want to name to do anything, you don't have anybody in your life that you trust, we can't just go find someone for you. Like, these are things that you're going to have to consider. So like the guardianship thing, it kind of gets back to this fundamental issue. It's like, maybe before you chose to have kids, whether it's before you got married or not, maybe you should have talked about this. Like, I just don't. I mean, look, I've been married more than once, and
Married.
because I don't know, maybe I just come from a perspective that if it's not working out, you don't have to stay in it. I don't know, but regardless, it's not like I'm some newlywed, even in my current and last and final marriage here. And it's not like we agree on everything, but there's this mutual love and respect where we talk things out and we come to an agreement. And I just like, we can't do that for you. Attorneys shouldn't have to try and do that for you. I mean, I guess if you want to, like, okay, you two, who do you want to be your guardians? Name them. Okay, I pick this person. All right, done. Let's move on. I mean, but what's sad is that people like can't agree on it. So what happens? They don't get anything done. So they're left at square one. And in this particular scenario, we're talking about where kids are going to end up being wards of the state and in foster care, and a judge is going to make that decision for you. So, any decision you can make, even if it's a compromise or not your first choice, if you were just on your own, I would hope is going to be better than what a judge would pick. And even if you don't think it's better than what a judge would pick, it at least will be quicker and less expensive than having to go through a court process while your kids are in limbo for a judge to decide on who it's going to be. And a judge in Texas is just limited by statute, or statutes, right, Sarah, is limited on who they can even pick. So if you have a best friend or if you're estranged from your family, and those are the people who are in the running, it's going to be family. Like, it doesn't matter, oh, my, best friend is is the godparent of my kids. Like, that doesn't mean anything in the law. It just doesn't. So figure it out. And then the last thing I want to hit on here is not really related to trying to do planning separately. It's just more for people who are unmarried and are not common law married or don't want to have to worry about whether that's true or not. You are considered strangers in the eyes of the law. So even like falling back on, well, the law would default to a spouse, even though it's a lot more expensive and time consuming, and other people could still challenge them. Other family members could challenge them. So again, even being married, it's important to do this, but you're not even considered. You're not even in the running. It's not like, well, I know this is someone that, is you're in a relationship with, but you don't have a medical power of attorney naming them. They can't make decisions for you. So unmarried partners certainly really need to understand that they should get some planning done to protect the ability to take care of one another and make decisions for one another, if you so choose. So, again, I don't want to turn into a marriage counselor or therapist, but I do some of the scenarios that we encounter. I do really wonder sometimes, like, what was your purpose? Like, because it's not like one of them is really wealthy. Like, okay, they just had a lot of money. That's why you got married. Um, it's not, uh, I like, why did you get married? And I'd like to, if there's a way to like ask people in an open forum without people getting defensive, like I'd really love to know. Cause everybody has their own preconceived notions of why people get married and what's the importance of a relationship and all of that. So I guess I just feel that taking it to that level and that commitment means that that person is just as important as you are. Their opinions, their needs, their goals are just as important as yours, and you need to forge a future and a life together where both of you are on equal playing field of that, and that there's certain shared experiences and responsibilities that come with that, which is actually a little bit of what was the demise of my first marriage. Is just, it felt like it was there's a lot, to me, my perspective, because I promise you this was not shared, was there is a lot of imbalance on who is carrying the weight of everything. And so it's like currently, like since I guess Kimberly's temporarily retired. I don't know, but she's not really working a whole lot because she's working at taking care of Banter Inc., our, all our kids. And so she feels like there's certain things that are her responsibility. So, and it's very interesting in the same sex dynamic because, there's no gender roles that you're prescribed. So it's kind of like, anyone's game, and that has benefits, but also some challenges to it. But if I just decide to unload the dishwasher or do the dishes, like she gets frustrated. And I'm like, well, I just want it done. So I'm going to do it. It's like, but that's my job. And if I see you doing it, it makes me feel like I'm not upholding my end of the bargain. So I say, that's right, ladies, so do it. No, so anyway, to me, it's
Mr.
like
T.
if you're not sharing those experiences and all that, like, I don't know. It's what works for me, like sharing everything, discussing everything. I mean, it doesn't really work for Kimberly because she does whatever she wants and I just find out about it. But see, I accept that. But,
Oh, I love that.
yeah, it's fun. It's fun. But I don't know. I do. I feel very lucky and this time around, very lucky to have found a perfect partner and balance for me. So it's kind of hard to try and wrap my head around what other people have going on, except Luke and Cynthia. I get them.
Yeah.
They make sense to me.
Yeah.
I think we have very similar relationships.
We have a very similar thing where Luke is typically the one that like loads the dishwasher, not the dishwasher. Well, yes, but also like the laundry. Like he'll start it, and then typically I'm the one who ends up like folding it, putting away, and everything. One day, this was like 6 months after we moved into our most recent like house where we live right now. I'm in the middle of like carrying a basket full of laundry. Like I'm walking towards the laundry room. He's like in the living room. He gets up and walks and follows me. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm loading the washer." And he's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "I'm trying to wash this laundry." And he looks at me. He's like, "Do you know how to work the washer?" And I look at him and I'm like, "I need you to leave this room."
He's so brave. Crazy.
No, so
Like
the flip side of that, because we've talked about this. The flip side of that, though, is one of the things that I think is most amusing about marriage is how, at least in my experience, like we'll just say Kimberly and I, we were both single adults taking care of ourselves, in Kimberly's case, taking care of kids, all of that. So you just have to presume fully functional human beings. And there's something about marriage that you suddenly forget, willfully, I think, on how to do the most basic things. And so I can tell you right now, like I kind of feel Luke on this, because if I saw Kimberly doing laundry, I would be thinking, do you even know how to use my washing machine? And then we have this whole thing where for some reason I am the microwaving guru. And I'm going to tell you all a little secret. It's only because I actively use 50% on the microwave. But if Kaya, the soon to be 15-year-old, is like rewarming spaghetti, and I see her put a big bowl of spaghetti with a big meatball in, and she puts it on high power for 3 minutes, I'm like, no, you can't do that. First of all, you're going to burn and like pop everything, and then the center of everything's going to be freezing. And so, because I'm very particular about how I microwave things, if Kaya goes to warm something up and I'll hear her in the kitchen with Kimberly and she'll say, like, how long should I warm this up for? Kimberly will say, ask Mom. And I'm like, seriously? Like, I need to come in
She said,
there.
that's not my business.
That's not my job.
I've got to come in there and be like, all right, let me see what you got. Okay, first of all, let's make a little hole in the middle. Okay. And let's warm it up first. 2 minutes, 50%. Check it, stir it.
Stirring.
Do another, okay. All right. Now we take, all right, minute and a half, 50%. All right. How's that? Okay. Stir it. And then 30 seconds, full power.
Yeah.
And I have suddenly forgotten how to make customer service calls.
I
Like,
don't
I
know if I know how to
actually-
work the gas pump anymore. I haven't gotten gas in
You
years.
haven't.
No, I seriously, the other day I was like, what if I absolutely have to? I don't know that I have not gotten gas since 2020, people. My husband does that.
Dang.
If he's like
So I
ever
guess-
going out of town, he'll fill up my car before he leaves. He knows to do that.
Well, it used to be. Oh, this used to be when, because you guys don't have the truck anymore, do you?
Luke has the truck.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it used to be like when I would pull into the office and you wouldn't have the Subaru, you had the truck. I would come in and be like, let me guess, the Subaru needs an oil change or it's out of gas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
it's like, you just won't even take it.
Well, because then he has to take it. So, or I'll have him drop me off now, every now and then, whenever it's the gas. I mean, the oil. The oil change. You know what?
That's
It's
pretty
nice. Leave
nice.
me alone.
That's nice. It's a good system.
No.
Yeah.
But anyway, so to me, like that, like when we were dating, this stuff didn't happen. But when we got married, it's like, all right, look, we're gonna have to get real with each other, and we gotta split up and decide who does what. But that's what works for us, I guess, not for everybody. So speaking of what works or doesn't work, Sam and Sarah, and Sarah's in an interesting relationship scenario because she has a common law roommate.
Is it interesting?
They're just cohabitating.
You're cohabitating. But anyway, what did you two come up with related to this topic?
We came up with the do's and don'ts for couples.
Oh boy.
Take it away, Sam.
I can't think of two better people to do this.
We're actually going to start with the don'ts first. So that way
Okay.
our last do is us. But don't rob a bank together and tell people about it.
Oh, wait, Sarah, wait. Can I interject something? Do you realize
Yeah.
that one of the benefits of being married is spousal immunity?
Oh, that's right.
Oh.
So you could rob a bank.
So, well, you
you can't be
can't,
compelled.
like, you couldn't tell on the other one.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can tell them about it, just not other
You can't
people.
testify against your own spouse
Yes. Like you could, but
I
you
didn't
can't
know
be compelled to
for
do
like
it.
private
Oh.
conversations.
Mm-hmm.
All
And
right.
of course, there's exceptions.
Okay. Do knight each other with a really cool sword.
All
Okay.
right.
Sam.
Okay.
Next.
Okay. Next.
Don't cut each
Don't-
other.
Oh, that's a long one. Okay. Okay. Don't quit your job, cut off your family, and move to another country after only knowing them for 2.5 months and then realizing they've had a secret family this entire time. And now you're in a foreign country where you don't know the language and you can't ask your family for help because you deleted all of their numbers and you don't have them memorized.
But if you do, you need to make sure you go on 90 Day Fiancé so that I can watch and you can get your bag.
All right. So, Sarah, are we
fair.
going to talk about 90 Day Fiance?
90 Day Finance.
90-day finance.
Anyhow, this is a real live thing that happened where we were messaging and Sarah said that there's this firm that we know locally that had a commercial on TV and that she saw it while she was watching 90 Day Finance. At least that's how I read it. And from what I know of Sarah, I was very perplexed as to why she was watching a finance show. And I have to tell you, my first thought was, this must be something for Emily, maybe? Maybe she's trying to get you guys on a budget? Like, with all these thoughts, it never occurred to me that I read it wrong until we're like days later, we're meeting in person. And I interrupt Sarah, as I often do. I'm like, what's this 90 Day Finance you're watching? And she's like, what? She's like, no, 90 Day Fiance.
Fiance.
Oh, that makes a
I just
lot
looked
more
at
sense,
you like,
frankly.
what? No.
My bad.
Yeah.
Okay. And our last don't cook together because according to Sarah, it's chaotic.
We cook together
So
a lot.
can you elaborate on that, Sarah?
I need Sarah to explain her and Emily's cooking styles.
So we are not allowed to cook together because we have very different cooking styles. I am a feel the vibe cook. I don't need times. I don't need measurements. I feel the vibe. Emily is not that. And she does not. I'm also really quick. I'm like, let's just get it done. And she wants to take her time. And at the end of the day, like, I'm just not allowed to cook with her anymore.
Notice how she's not allowed to cook with her, not the other way.
Right. She can cook with me. I'm not allowed to cook with her.
I would not be able to cook with you. I get you on the quickness part, but I have to have a recipe or I'm scared I'm going to fail.
You could cook with me and Luke. You just have to clean up after yourself. We're more like feel the vibes. I think that needs a little more. Let's just.
Yeah.
But also, Luke is a really good cook, so it's true.
I don't like to cook that often.
All right. And the last do is to do your estate plan together. If you want.
If you want to.
If you want to let them know or not.
Yeah.
It's just easier, right?
Yeah.
Just easier if you can talk to your spouse about major life and death decisions. I think we can end it on that. Thanks for listening. And just to cover all our bases about what you just heard, I'm sorry and you're welcome. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And tell your friends about us. We do webinars and live events. The best way to stay up to date is to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. Links are in the show notes. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover, maybe you have a question you'd like us to answer, or maybe you just want to say hi, hit the link in the show notes or go to burch-law.com/podcast and fill out the contact form.
Much better.
Yeah. I thought that had a lot of energy.